I reached the temple before the end of the afternoon, intending on leaving a gift of money in the treasury box. But when I got there I could see how busy it was. So many people have come to Jerusalem for the Passover celebrations. All these important people moving about. I looked at the 2 small coins that I held in my hand and made my way to a dark corner where I could wait unseen until the crowds went home. As I waited, I thought back over my life. God has been so good to me. I had had a wonderful husband for many years. Sadly, he died a few years ago, but I have so many happy memories of our life together. I thought about my children, grown up now with families of their own. They don't live here, but they come and see me when they can. I thought about my neighbours, so kind and caring, keeping an eye on me to make sure I'm okay. In fact, one of them has been in today and has brought a bowl of soup for my supper. I thought about my little house. Okay, it's only 1 room, but is my home, and I love it. I thought about my walk here today and how many strangers smiled and waved as I made my way along the street, all so excited about the Passover. Yes, I have been blessed with all the riches God has given me. I looked again at the coins in my hand. I remembered how excited I was when I found them this morning as I was sweeping the floor. I must have dropped them at some time, and they'd rolled into this dark corner, and today I had found them. I thought that maybe I could buy half a loaf of bread to have with my soup, or maybe save them to go towards a new shawl. This one needs repairing again. But I decided to give them to God. I can give Pat the shawl, and the soup will do fine for my supper. The wealthy merchants were now starting to move off. The wine merchant was loudly telling his servant to put his offering in the box. The spice merchant was making sure everyone could hear him loudly declaring how heavy his offering was. The crowds were slowly disappearing now as people started to go home, and I could quietly make my way to the box and drop in my 2 coins. I silently thanked the Lord for all the good gifts he has given me and turned to make my way out. It was then I noticed someone sitting, watching, beside the treasury box. He had such a kind look on his face, and I felt that here was someone different, someone special. I bowed my head so that he wouldn't see my face, embarrassed at putting so little in. But then I turned my head and looked again, because I felt as if someone was calling my name. He smiled, and I stood up just a little straighter and walked on, back to my little house and my bowl of soup. I did what I could. What would you have done?
Mark chapter 12, verses 38 to 43. As he taught, Jesus said, "Watch out for the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely." Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others." Amen.
worth is not in what I own, not in the strength of flesh and bone, but in the costly wounds of love at the cross. My worth is not in skill or name, in win or lose, in pride or shame, but in the blood of Christ that flowed at the cross. I rejoice in my Redeemer, greatest treasure, wellspring of my soul. I will trust in Him, no other. My soul is satisfied in Him alone. Him alone. As summer flowers we fade and die, vain youth and beauty hurry by, but life eternal calls to us at the cross. I will not boast in wealth or might, or human wisdom's fleeting light, but I will boast in knowing Christ at the cross. I rejoice in my Redeemer, greatest treasure, wellspring of my soul. I will trust in Him, no other. My soul is satisfied in Him alone. Two wonders here that I confess, my worth and my unworthiness, my value fixed, my ransom paid at the cross.
Jesus anointed at Bethany. Now the Passover and the feast of the unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some sly way to arrest Jesus and kill him. But not during the feast, they said, or the people may riot. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them any time you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. I tell you the truth. Wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money, so he watched for an opportunity to hand him over.
The city was really buzzing that day. Well, you would expect that, really. It was the festival of Passover. And ever since Jesus had arrived in Jerusalem on that donkey, you could feel the excitement in the air. Excitement, yes, but there's also this undercurrent of tension too. You see, the Jewish authorities, they weren't happy with Jesus at all. I they felt that he undermined their authority, and it was becoming clear that maybe they were going to do something to get rid of him for good. And so what Jesus had predicted about being tortured and killed, it seemed like that really was going to happen. So it was strange to me that although the disciples, they really loved Jesus and they believed his teaching, they just didn't want to face the fact that he would actually die. I mean, they'd been with him so much, they'd seen him perform miracles, and they knew that he spoke the truth. But this was one truth that they just didn't want to believe. I think that's what you call burying your head in the sand. But I mean, who could blame them? I didn't want to believe it either. I'd call it woman's intuition if you like, but I just knew that Jesus was going to be put to death. And I was afraid for him. I was horrified by the thought. But here's the strange thing. I had this overwhelming sense that there was something God wanted me to do. I honestly don't expect you to understand. I mean, I really didn't understand. And as I hear myself telling you about it now and saying it out loud, it just still seems unbelievably crazy. But I just knew that I had to anoint Jesus' body for burial. For burial. Even though he was still alive. But how on earth was I going to do that? And what would I use? What did I have that would be suitable to anoint someone so special? And then I remembered there was that beautiful jar of perfumed oil. It had been in our family for generations. It had been passed down to my mother from her mother before her, and now it had been passed down to me. And I thought, could I possibly use that? And I thought, yes, actually, yes, that would be perfect. I would. Now, I can hear what you're thinking in your head. Is she mad? Is that not a huge extravagance? But that's what you do for love, isn't it? I mean, there wasn't going to be another chance to do this for Jesus. I had to get it right. I was so nervous as I entered the room. I tried to ignore all the faces that turned towards me and just focus on Jesus. My heart was racing. My hands shook as I broke open the jar to release the perfume oils. I never said a word. I didn't give an explanation. I just poured the oil over Jesus' head. All of it. Every last drop. I'd only intended to put a few drops on his head, but when it came to it, I was so overwhelmed with love for my Lord that I couldn't hold any back, and I just emptied the whole jar over him. Then I held my breath as I waited for the inevitable reactions that I thought would follow. But actually, in truth, there was only one that I cared about. He wasn't angry with me. He didn't say, "What do you think you're doing?" No. When I heard him say that I had done a beautiful thing for him, I felt this incredible sense of peace come over me. And I knew in my heart that I had done the right thing. Actually, the only thing that I could. Can you understand that? I mean, what would you have done?
It's beautiful. It's costly. It's foolish. It's sacrificial. How would you describe the giving that we find in the two stories today? In those passages from Mark's Gospel, we discover both women giving in extraordinarily generous ways, in contrast to those around them. Both are commended by Jesus, in contrast to those around them. Both are beautiful examples of devoted followers to Jesus, in contrast to those around them. And both are a foretaste of what Jesus himself will do in the days that follow. Outside the temple, there were 13 collection jars in the shape of trumpets. The more money you put into them, the louder the sound they made. And Jesus watches as many wealthy people throw money in, craving the approval of those around them, keen that others will notice and praise their generosity. From what Jesus says, the people he's watching are full of religiosity and hypocrisy. When they give, it's out of their plenty, what they have to spare, their leftovers. But along comes a poor widow, and she discreetly places 2 small coins, 2 mites, into one of the collection containers. The gift is of literally no monetary value. And yet Jesus discerns that this gift is worth so much more than all the other money that has been ploughed into these collection jars. Because she gives everything she has. She gives out of her poverty. Some would argue that her actions are reckless because she could so easily have held back 1 coin for herself. But no, her heart is so full of thanksgiving and generosity that she holds nothing back. She becomes the model of sacrificial giving. As Jesus watches her, I wonder if he thinks on his own sacrifice, when he will give his all for God, when he will hold nothing back in order to save us. A few days later, at a house in Bethany, another woman comes and anoints Jesus with a whole bottle of perfume. Can you imagine the smell that must have invaded every part of that home? We're told by Mark that the chief priests are already plotting to kill Jesus. And we're told afterwards that Judas goes to betray Jesus. We're told that those around the table grumble at the waste of her actions. All around is darkness and anger, bitterness and jealousy. But in the middle is this most beautiful and extravagant, costly and reckless act of worship and devotion. All she cares about is Jesus. She's not interested in the rebukes of the men at the table who've been busy calculating the value of the perfume poured out. She's not interested in moderation or hoarding her resources. She's not interested in the proprieties of what's going on. She sees her one opportunity to demonstrate her deep love of Jesus, honouring his body, affirming his dignity. And she seizes that opportunity with both hands. Like the widow, Jesus commends her for the beauty and the goodness of what she has done. Could there be any higher praise than she did what she could as he defends her? This amazing act of kindness lifts his heart in the midst of plots to betray, to break, and to kill him. And I, for one, am so thankful that she was willing to respond to that impulse to minister to Jesus. That he is the recipient of this act of kindness, the last act of kindness that he will receive in advance of the crucifixion. As he looks on in praise of her, is he thinking about his own sacrifice when he will quite literally be poured out on the cross? Not a drop spared, all for us. When he will be broken in order that we might be restored, reconciled in our relationship with God. a fragrant offering to the Lord, an offering of obedience and of love. In these two stories, the question comes, where are we? Whose side are we on? Would our voice join with those that so readily dismiss the widow because of her poverty and rebuke the reckless actions of the anonymous woman? Would we be embarrassed for or by them? Would we recoil from the extravagance and over-the-top nature of the anointing? Would we even ever have noticed the widow? Or would we have been too busy making sure that the trumpets sounded with our own giving? Or do we perhaps hear the words of Jesus? She did what she could, and want more than anything that that's what he would say of us. What would you have done?